Christopher Nolan shielded Zack Snyder from watching Justice League. Discover the tragic story, fan movement, and the triumph of the Snyder Cut. Welcome to Stats In. If you're just joining us, please subscribe and don't forget to turn on notifications bell for more VD. Their creative pursuits have also led to camaraderie between the two, and amid the chaos of one film's production, Nolan stepped in to shield Snyder from unnecessary heartbreak. This story is about one of the darkest chapters of DC that occurred in real life, becoming a saga of tragedy and eventually rebuilding. Christopher Nolan and Zack Snyder are both titans of modern cinema and have immensely contributed to the superhero genre. The former is still celebrated for his Dark Knight trilogy, which was revolutionary, while the latter is known for infusing larger-than-life visuals with gritty storytelling. As per reports, the director's wife, Deborah Snyder, attended a private screening and watched the movie alongside Christopher Nolan, who was an executive producer of the film, via Vanity Fair. The experience was far from decent because she recounted the aftermath, stating, "They came and they just said, 'You can never see that movie.'" Zack Snyder had to step away from the 2017 Justice League due to a devastating personal tragedy. The absence of his creative force turned the movie into a lackluster, confusing, and boring experience. Warner Brothers had entrusted Joss Whedon in the absence of Snyder, and the hastily reworked version was rejected by fans and critics alike. Snyder had to leave the movie because his family was struck with the most painful grief that one could ever experience. His daughter, Autumn Snyder, had taken her own life in 2017, which left everyone shattered. The studio's demands kept increasing, and he did not want to be more drained in the process. As per reports, the director's wife, Deborah Snyder, attended a private screening and watched the movie alongside Christopher Nolan, who was an executive producer of the film, via Vanity Fair. The experience was far from decent because she recounted the aftermath, stating, "They came and they just said, 'You can never see that movie.'" Fans rebelled and campaigned tirelessly, in an attempt to push the studio into releasing Snyder's original vision. Finally, in 2021, all their efforts paid off, and the 4-hour-long Snyder Cut was released on HBO Max. The director dedicated his film to Autumn, stating that, without her, this absolutely would not have happened. His exit was framed to be voluntary, but the director clarified that the circumstances were far more complicated. Viewers were disappointed to see the movie underperform in all aspects, and the demand for #SnyderCut became a relentless movement. In James Gunn's quest to bring back iconic Superman elements like the red trunks, will he include this important element that Zack Snyder left out? Welcome to Stats In. If you're just joining us, please subscribe and don't forget to turn on notifications bell for more VD. While Henry Cavill is now regarded as one of the best actors to portray Superman, and fans were extremely sad to see him leave the role after James Gunn decided to revamp the DCU, his Superman debut Man of Steel was divisive upon release. Director Zack Snyder's vision to go with a dark and gritty iteration was criticized by many in 2013. James Gunn's Superman has been all the rage this week after DC Studios released the first teaser trailer for the upcoming film. The film would begin the first chapter of Gunn's newly launched DCU, which recently had a soft launch with the Max series Creature Commandos. The film is set to release on July 11, 2025. From the color tone to the costume of Superman, Gunn's film has already proven to be miles away from Zack Snyder's Man of Steel with Henry Cavill. Gunn mentioned in an interview that he felt good about exploring Superman's kindness, as opposed to Snyder's exploration of power. He might also use one quality of Kal-El that Snyder deliberately left out. While Snyder said that producer and co-writer Christopher Nolan moved them in a grittier direction, he claimed that the decision to exclude the ice breath was his decision, via Empire. "I did that a little bit. Look, I don't know that he does not have ice breath. He just doesn't use it. For instance, in this, people were like, 'Oh, there is no kryptonite.' That doesn't mean kryptonite does not exist. It just didn't show up here." Kryptonite did come back in a huge way in Snyder's 2016 follow-up Batman v Superman, Dawn of Justice. However, Henry Cavill's Superman is still in his early stages during the events of Man of Steel, and still might not know the extent of his powers. Hence, the use of ice breath after his resurrection in ZSJL makes more sense. Snyder's iteration of America's first superhero changed and left out some classic aspects of Superman's mythology. Among many things, this also included the red trunks that he wears over his costume and the lack of ice breath. The superpower is an irreplaceable element of Superman's mythos, but it was only used once in Zack Snyder's Justice League from its teaser trailer, Gunn has established that it will not be as dark and gritty as Zack Snyder's version and will take a more hopeful tone. In a press review, the filmmaker and co-chief of DC Studios also mentioned why he felt good morally about the upcoming film. He also promised that they would be using all of the heroes' mythology via variety. Superhero movies have taken these characters and said, okay, it's Batman, or it's Superman, but it's not any of the other stuff. We're embracing all of the Superman mythology. He has a lot of the things that we love from the Superman comics that we haven't been able to see as much of in filmed media, and definitely haven't been able to see in a grounded way, which is what I hope we've created. Part of staying true to his mythology includes some of his powers like ice breath that may sound silly in theory, especially while depicting in a film. Gunn has promised to make these elements as grounded as possible without them being silly. He even had a justification for why he chose to bring back the red trunks. So, Zack Snyder's Superman was not perfect. It definitely had potential and his 5-movie plan was interesting, to say the least. But it is over now, and so are all the other issues people had with his take on Kal-El. Now, all the burden, criticisms, and appreciation lies on James Gunn to make a different Superman. Zack Snyder talked about how Warner Brothers had 2 mandates that he had to follow while making Justice League, but it was paradoxical in nature. Welcome to Stats In. If you're just joining us, please subscribe and don't forget to turn on notifications bell for more VED. It was a mandate that Snyder understood was necessary. However, the director is known for his slow world-building style and for taking things to extreme levels through macro shots and a linear plotline. Well, Snyder was quite frustrated when Warner Brothers ordered him to finish the whole movie in 2 hours. Warner Brothers loves 2 things: short-length films and humor. Unfortunately for veteran director Zack Snyder, that seemed to be a tricky subject when he was working on his version of Justice League. Although it could be done, Snyder stated that for just the storyline, he would have to ignore the comedic scenes, the minor subplots, and some of the elements of the larger world building that he planned to keep in the movie. Starring Ben Affleck, Henry Cavill, Gal Gadot, Ezra Miller, Ray Fisher, and Jason Momoa in leading roles, it was a hard effort to wrap the whole thing up within 2 hours. When personal tragedy struck, Zack Snyder had to leave the project, which was later overtaken by Marvel director Joss Whedon. In an interview with Vanity Fair, Snyder recalled his frustration with WB and how he did not like the mandates at all. There was a mandate from Tsujihara that the movie be 2 hours long. He further continued, although they had stepped out of the picture, Snyder wanted to see his version of the movie come to life. The director remembers that he had one conversation with Joss Whedon during the whole ordeal. After that, he was simply done. How am I supposed to introduce 6 characters and an alien with potential for world domination in 2 hours? I mean, I can do it, it can be done. Clearly, it was done, referring to Joss Whedon's version. In 2017, Autumn Snyder, the daughter of Zack Snyder, committed suicide, and the 300 director had to step away from Justice League to be with his family during that time. During the time of grief and consolation, the director would often get calls about his upcoming film. Although he wanted to bring his vision to life, Snyder was also losing a mental battle.